No choking and no barn raids. We're just talking the Travers. What up, people? We are back. It has been a little while for me, and welcome back, Matt, who's starting to become a regular. Matthew, how's it going, man?
Oh, it's going great. Thanks so much for having me, and look forward to being more of a regular on the channel and putting out some content of my own. So excited for that and excited for the opportunity. And obviously a huge week this week with the Travers.
Yeah, and it's been a big week leading up. There's a lot of the biggest names in the 3-year-old industry in this one. It's going to be fun. But what we're going to do today is a little different. We talked about this, and we wanted to do something a little bit off the radar. This is the top 5. We're going to do the top 5. We've each put together a little list of our favorite winners of the Travers, or the favorite races of the Travers, and who won them. Not necessarily the greatest horses of all time to win it. So I think we talked about that. That would be, we'd be beating each other in the head over splitting hairs over fractions of a second. This is personally your top 5 favorites. So I'm gonna open up, because I'm just gonna say it this way.
All right.
I got into horse racing right around the turn of the century, 2000, late 90s. I dabbled a little bit, started getting serious in the early aughts, and so I don't have anything on my list prior to the year 2000. I don't know if you went there or not.
Oh, interesting. So I did go back. So one of the things I love doing is leading up to a big race. I love going back and watching earlier editions of that race to kind of get me psyched. I love doing that. And so I end up on these like hour-long YouTube click holes of just why, yes, I do want to watch the 1972 Florida Derby. And like, I just start watching, like going back and back and back. And so there are a couple, I have one from the 90s and one from the 60s actually on my list. And then the others are from the 2010s. But
I'm not against the idea of that.
Yeah. So
here's the thing, like me and my buddies, we've established this thing, like, who's the greatest quarterback of all time? I mean, obviously it's Brady now, but I mean, like, everybody used to be like, oh, what about Bart Starr? It's like, dude, we're not young, but I'm not old enough to know what Bart Starr looked like on the field. So we always put the little caveat, like post 1990 or post 1980 or post 2000 or whatever. So that's kind of what I did here, only because I didn't pay attention then.
Sure. No, understandable. It's
with that said, with that said, let's start it with number 5. I'll go.
Sure.
First.
Go for it.
And again, this is the horse that was dominating the year I fell in love with it, and started getting halfway serious about it. 2001.
Okay.
Point Given.
Yeah.
That horse won it felt like every race that year except the Derby. Preakness, Belmont.
Mm-hmm.
Travers, I don't know, Haskell. There was like everything else, and that was like that was my introduction to a dominant horse. Gary Stevens was a very likable jockey, still is in the booth.
Mm-hmm.
He made my top 5 for that reason. And again, not necessarily a top 5 greatest talent of all time, but to me, that was a great horse to represent the initiation of my addiction to the game.
Oh yeah, no, I think you always remember kind of that first horse that gets you serious about it, and the first horse that really, that you remember. I mean, I've been casually watching horse racing for years and years. Since I was a kid, it was always on in the background. But one of the first years I really remember was Smarty Jones in 2004, and it was because I was from Pennsylvania, and so it connected with me. I was actually at the Preakness that year that he won. And so it was just, one of those things where Smarty Jones, the greatest racehorse? No, but that's one of my personal favorite racehorses of all time. So
mine too. I love that horse.
Horse. Really great horse. And, you always remember those horses that kind of introduce you to the sport or that were around when you first start watching a lot.
I remember Smarty Jones being one of the ones where it was like, this might be the Triple Crown, because the elusive Triple Crown was, 30 years old or whatever, that nobody had done it in 30 years or whatever it was. But who did you put at your number 5 most important?
So my number 5, most important to me, it really speaks to kind of the rewatchability of a race. And that is the 2012 Dead Heat between Alpha and Golden Ticket. And so That's just one of those where I can fire that race up on YouTube and listen to Durkin's call
Yeah,
as they're coming down the
legendary.
stretch. And, where he goes, so because it's a photo, and he kind of thinks Alpha might have gotten his head down. And it was just a great race too, because you had Alpha, who was the overwhelming favorite, coming off the win at the Jim Dandy. And then you had Golden Ticket, who was, more of kind of just a, kind of middle of the road horse, coming off an allowance win before going into the Travers. And so, it was just kind of a long shot and favorite, just duking it out down the stretch. And, you just didn't think Alpha was going to get there at all. And then for it to finish in a dead heat was just, incredible. And what sometimes I forget, at least until I start rewatching, is how close Fast Falcon, who finished third, got to almost making it a triple dead heat. I mean, he was a neck behind those two and was coming like a freight train at the end. So that was just one. I just always think that's just a thrilling race that I can fire up and watch anytime. So that's who I have at number 5.
Friend of the Prophets, David Cohen, was involved in that. And that was his most memorable as a jockey. His most memorable moment as a jockey. That's what he shared with us in one of his interviews he did. So, yeah, he was in the dead heat. Was it Ramon Dominguez, the other jockey, involved there with the dead heat?
Yes.
Yeah. So that was cool. That's a cool moment just to, that's the most memorable part of it for me, that same race. But
yeah.
Number 4, I have Irrigate 2016.
That's my number 4 as well.
All right. And here's why. I mean, obviously the absurdly fast time he ran, track record or race record. The only time it's ever been under 2 minutes, if I'm correct there, I think.
Yep. Correct.
Still, I was pretty sure that was the case. Mike Smith, Baffert again. Memorable for those reasons. I mean, anytime you have a horse that beats a 100-year-old, race record time, that's pretty sweet. And that horse, also one of the leading money-winning horses of all time too, Irrigate. Not one of my favorites, but I put him on this list for that reason, just because it's a super memorable for the record-setting, like elite status times he was running. So.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. I put him on the list for the same reason in a lot of ways. It was also the length of victory. I love watching dominant performances. That's one of the things I love watching. I mean, there's a reason, YouTube suggests that I watch the 1973 Belmont every time I log on, it's you love watching those dominant performances. And for Irrigate to win by 12 lengths while setting the track record. And the other part is, I think now I look at this race a little bit differently because, of course, the horse that finished third in that race was Gunrunner. And now Gunrunner is, kind of the center of the siring world and has become this kind of, maybe has overtaken Irrigate in some way in his siring career. And so I just think that, that's also a piece that I think is only going to make that performance greater over time as you look back, because there's great horses in the race.
Great point. So we both had Irrigate at 4. That's a fun tidbit we did not discuss ahead of time.
No, we didn't.
I bet you don't have the same number 3 as me, because this was just last year. Essential Quality.
Oh, okay.
2021.
Yeah.
I had a personal I don't know what it was about that horse. It was a really cool looking horse. I'm a Brad Cox slappy.
Yeah.
Saez slappy. It was just the right combination. Went to Keeneland that year and saw him. Went at the Bluegrass Stakes and just I loved that horse from day one. And I felt like too that was kind of a redemption tour for EQ, because he didn't win the Derby, even though I feel like he was the best horse of that year, and to my favorite horse of the last 10 years, probably at least. I just really liked that horse a lot, and I think he's better than his statistics will show historically.
Yeah,
my thing with him.
I think so
close,
too.
like in every race that he didn't win, he was this close to winning, and then he won a lot too, obviously. So,
yeah, no, that was a great race, and I mean, I'm a big, I was a huge Midnight Bourbon fan last year. I mean, to the point where my buddies would joke with me and they nicknamed me Midnight Matty because I love that horse so much.
That horse was incredible. I loved him too, dude. Like,
no,
second best every time though. Just like I felt like Hot Rod Charlie was the same way. Like, and those two were like, that was just a really good crop. It was a cool crop to watch.
It was a good crop. It was an honest crop. You're always going to get an honest race out of those horses. They were always going to show up, and so it was. That was a great race, and I agree with you. I think Essential Quality is going to have a really nice long post career. I like him as a sire. I'm excited about that.
All right, who'd you have at 3?
So 3, I went into the Wayback Machine. I went to 1962.
You were
And
alive then, right?
My dad was barely alive.
Yeah, true.
Or my mom, I guess I should say, was barely alive. But Jaipur versus Ryden. And this was one of those that I got introduced to on that kind of YouTube click hole, because I'm not just firing up the 1962 Travers for the heck of it. And so
it's pretty nerdy if you were, but
it really would be. But it's one of those races, if our listeners aren't, haven't watched it yet, do search it out, because it's a match race between those two. From the word go, those two go out neck and neck, and they run blistering early fractions, and they open up 6-7 lengths on the field, and they are just going at each other, and you think there's no way they're going to hold on. Coming around the third turn, they kind of start giving their horse a little bit of a breather, and the rest of the field kind of catches up, but then they both dig in and pull away, and you just don't think you just don't know who's going to separate them, and you expect somebody from the back to make a run, and nobody really does. And these two are just neck and neck the entire way around, just stride for stride. And finally, Jaipur gets barely a nose ahead of Ryden, and just really impressive. I mean, and Jaipur, obviously, very famous horse, won the Belmont, won the Withers, was the 3-year-old champion colt. But Ryden was a great horse as well, won the Bluegrass, won the Florida Derby, was actually probably a better juvenile than Jaipur. And so it was just great to watch kind of this prodigious 2-year-old, who was still a very solid 3-year-old, then take on the eventual champion 3-year-old. And it's a grainy video, but it's worth pulling up and watching, because the call is really great, and it's an amazing match race between those two.
Yeah, don't let the video quality deter you, because there's some great ones that look like hell as far as quality go. But
absolutely.
All right, let's get in. Number 2, I went with 2003.
Okay.
This horse is not world famous. Pat Day was on. That's a world famous jockey that was on him. It was my first appearance at Saratoga, my first and only appearance at the Travers Live. It was 10 Most Wanted, and it was he was getting third. I think he got 3rd or 4th, 5th, maybe in the Derby. He was knocking on the door all year, and in that race that day, he kicked ass. It was a great memory, because it was really my first big time horse race I ever went to live too. And Saratoga, and I was a young buck. I won't give away my age. Let's just say I was barely legal to drink alcohol in 2003. How's that? But yeah, it was a great time. Went with some of my best friends, and it was just a great memory. That's one of those personal things. Had bet him, made some money on him on top of the memories of just him winning when I was there. But who'd you go with it too?
So I went to the 1990s. I went to 1994, and that's the Bull. I went with Holy Bull over Bull, Concern. Baby. And in
case you haven't heard of him,
I think this is a race that and part of the reason I picked this race was this was a great example of a super dramatic race with a really small field. It was a 5-horse race, and Concern gets off to just an abysmal start, and at first call is 15 lengths back from Holy Bull, and Bull runs the race like a freaking turf horse. I mean, he's 7 lengths clear of the field and just knocking out 110 and change opening 3/4 fractions like it's nobody's business. And then all of a sudden, you just see this dart that's Concern kind of circling around the 3rd and 4th turn. And it looked like somebody, what it reminded me of is when people they're at the airports and they're on those like little people movers, and they're just moving on a different rate of speed than everybody else. And it looked like that was what Concern was doing.
Flat escalator? I don't know how to describe it, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah. And you can just automatically go like 10 miles an hour if you're on just a reasonable
Exactly. Even if you're standing still, and if you're walking, you feel like you're a superhero. And so, and I just remember that it's a great call, and it's not Durkin. So I'm not sure. It wasn't Embrial. I don't know who was the call, but it was as they go around the turn, Concern is really eating into Bull's lead, and the call is there's a cause for concern coming down the stretch. And, and it was just like, it was a great call. And ultimately Bull though digs in and holds off Concern, and just a really thrilling stretch run.
Tongue dragging in the dirt, dude. I remember that one. Between
Yeah,
Great
deep
call.
closer. Yeah, and a great horse in Holy Bull. So that's why made number 2 on my list.
And also made legendary status with the Holy Bull Stakes.
Oh yeah,
Once you have a big race named after you, you know you're something, right?
absolutely.
My number one now, this is, I personally think it's one of the best horses of all time.
Mhm.
Also, my personal luckiest betting horse of all time. The horse did everything right for me in that regard too. Pretty much won, I don't know, most of the big races that year. Was 2007
Mhm.
with old Cal Burrell on board.
I love it.
Street Sense, baby. That thing
Yeah.
was, that's my guy.
Yeah.
That was my luckiest horse. I hit him on every race that he hit. Dodged him at the right place. Just one of those like
Yeah.
dodge a bullet when you he might get beat here. He got beat. And then every race
Yeah.
I did bet him to win, he won. It was great. Very cooperative horse in 2007 with Street Sense. So who's your most memorable Travers Stakes winner?
Well, I think we're going to have a little bit of a conflict here because mine is 2015, and that is, of course, the year the Keen Ice upsets American Pharaoh in the Travers, and
Yep.
and that was one again that's just rewatchability. I can watch that race all day, and part of the reason I love this race is because the 3 horses that were kind of the 3 principal horses from the Belmont, which were American Pharaoh, Frosted, and Keen Ice, were kind of the 3 principal horses in this race.
Yeah.
And I always will remember Larry Colmus's call in the Belmont. Frosted is all out. And I just, and you realize at that moment that this is going to happen. This drought is going to be over.
Yeah.
And Pharaoh's going to win. But then you see the Haskell and Keen Ice, even though Pharaoh's under a very easy ride at that point, Keen Ice is making this hellacious run late and is passing horses. And you think maybe there's a chance. And then just the tactical way that race played out with Frosted really pressuring American Pharaoh, then Pharaoh just digging down and just really pulling away from Frosted and just kind of vanquishing him. And then all of a sudden you see Keen Ice out of the, coming down the middle of the track like a freight train. And you realize he's going to get him. And it was a really thrilling race. And I think, as much as I love watching dominance, there's a reason that one of the great quotes in boxing is down goes Frazier, down goes Frazier.
Yeah.
Because there's also this, when the champion gets beat, it's also extremely memorable. So Keen Ice for me is the number 1 performance in the Travers.
And I know Vinny, who's going to watch this eventually, hopefully one of our guys here on the channel. Same, that's his too. And I got news for you, dude. Like, are you a superhero dork or no?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
I hate that stuff. Like, I hate it.
Yeah.
So I was just going to ask you, like, do you root for the bad guys in the movies? I generally do.
I do.
That is an instance where I wasn't. Like, I wanted to see Pharaoh go legend. I wanted him to be the new Secretariat.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. Because, like I said, I had to see there was obviously that was a trip. He's already a legend anyway. But
yeah,
I didn't want to see him lose. That was all. It was like watching Mike Tyson get beat by Buster Douglas. It was like, it was bittersweet.
Yeah.
And you're right. I see why, especially if you had money on him, because I can't remember what the odds were there, but
yeah, I forget.
I'm sure Pharaoh was 1-5 or something crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good one. That's definitely memorable because I mean, dude, Pharaoh, like I said, he's going to go down historically. He's one of the best ever anyway.
Yeah. And it cements the legacy of Saratoga too, being the graveyard of champions. I mean, it
Exactly.
So it feeds into that narrative as well. So you love a race that just, you can touch on so many different narratives in a race. I think that's sometimes what makes it great is it grows in its estimation over time as well. And I think that's one that I admit, I mean, I remember watching that live and like you, I was disappointed. I wanted to see American Pharaoh be undefeated. I wanted to see him just run through everybody and be this great horse. But it's also
just
one
so
of
you
those
can say when you're an old man that I watched that.
Exactly.
There's something cool about that. But yeah,
exactly. And but it's one of those that now, as more time passes, I can rewatch that race and just appreciate what Keen Ice did. And
for sure.
Yeah. So
I see both sides.
Number 1. Yeah.
It's a good number 1. I told Vinny that would have been, how many years has it been going on? 100 and whatever years. He'd been dead last on my list. So I disagree with your choice, but I get it. Reluctantly, I get it.
I love it.
So yeah, man, like you mentioned, dude. So we got a lot of new content coming up as the summer heats up towards Breeders' Cup. Matt's got a new show coming up on our channel.
Yep.
I don't know if it's going to be weekly, bi-weekly, whatever. We're going to work on that, but a lot
Yep.
of good stuff coming. Vinny's been doing his shows. Colin Sheehan's been doing his shows. A lot of good stuff. More content coming as we pick up toward the Breeders' Cup, which is obviously the pinnacle of the fall season, and we're all looking forward to it. All the win-your-ins. Anything else you want to touch on, Matt, before we sign off here tonight?
Yeah, just to say, start looking for some of the content next week that I'll be putting out on here, and we'll be doing a countdown to Keeneland, and so it'll be a weekly show looking at all the win and your ins, previewing those, and also recapping the ones from the previous week, not just here in North America, but across the world. Make sure that you're up to speed by the time we get to Keeneland in November, and you know exactly what horses to be betting on and thinking about as we get closer to the biggest day in horse racing. So excited to be joining you guys, and I'm sure I'll be popping on different shows throughout, but always a lot of fun to talk to you, and really look forward to producing more content.
Absolutely, man. So I think we just talked about a little bit before, maybe Pacific Classics, your inaugural event.
Yep. Going to be covered next week, and Pacific Classes, the winning you're in, and that means we get to talk about Flightline, which is one of the most divisive horses in the game right now. So can't wait to talk about him and that entire field and some of the other winning you're in races that weekend too.
All right, man. Thanks for joining. It's been fun. Good luck this weekend. See you.